I'm Mary Lyons, and I am the Wealth Woman.
And I'm Eric Alexander from Benchmark Income Group.
And this is the Big Wealth Podcast.
Everything you've ever been taught about money is wrong.
But don't worry, we're here to help.
On this podcast, we'll use the same tools you already know to actually help set you free.
Free to do what you want with your time, with your money, and with your energy. Free to live your life the way you have dreamt about.
So we're going to talk about wealth knowledge, personal reflections, and the financial industry news of the day.
Welcome to the Big Wealth Podcast. Today we have Amanda Smith, founder of Dallas Girl Gang, with us, and she is going to tell us the story of her journey. She was a teacher for quite some time, I think, and launched the Dallas Girl Gang, which is an amazing community of women. And she now coaches other individuals as well, so that they can have some of the freedom that she has enjoyed. So Amanda, tell us your story. Where'd you start? We want to hear the origin story.
I love it. Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure, and to be on a podcast and be on the other side of the microphone for once. I'm always on the other side, on our show. But yeah, like you said, I'm Amanda Smith. I started a community called Dallas Girl Gang. I was a music education major, and so I taught music in the elementary world for 7 years. Well, let's say one of those years I taught high school and middle school, which was kind of a fluke, and I just never went back. And so elementary was really my calling. And when we moved back to Dallas, so I'm from here, went to a small school in Arkansas, met my husband. We came back to Texas, and it was just kind of like starting over. I grew up here, but I hadn't lived here since I was 18. So friends aren't here. My community's not here anymore. And there was no pocket of people or community like for women in, business. At the time I was doing a network marketing business, I think everybody has some kind of experience with network marketing or multi-level marketing. But I also was a teacher, and, as a teacher, I think, especially nowadays, a lot of people are joining Teaching Young and things like that, but that's not really like your people that you hang out with, that you really connect with. They're your coworkers, right? You could be friends with them, but that's not always the case. And so I started looking around Dallas for things to do and how to meet people. And, I would find like stuff for fashion influencers or the junior league or, real estate agents. So it's very specific pockets of people, which I think is fine. But I was like, I want to meet everybody, more types of people and just a diverse group of people. And so I clicked with a few people, wanted to stay in touch, started a Facebook group, nothing just mind blowing, and called it Dallas Girl Gang because I saw something about Girl Gang on Pinterest. I was scrolling one day and I was like, that would be cute. And 4 years later, I mean, this sounds very simple. This is not this easy, but 4 years later, here we are. And I quit my teaching job, built a 6-figure business. I'm coaching other women, and our community is now well past Texas, and very like nationwide. So it has been crazy and exciting. And here in 2021, I'm excited to get back to in-person events. So
Yeah, and your slogan is "You can sit with us," which I love because it's so inclusive. And I've talked to so many women in Dallas that when they moved here from somewhere else, they had such a hard time finding their community. Right. And I had that experience too. I mean, I tell people you got to give Dallas 3 years because that's how long it took me to find my people. Right. And even then it was a lot of work. And, I think for someone who is naturally extroverted, that may not be quite so difficult, but for someone who skews more towards the introvert side of things, I think Dallas can be very intimidating. I want to hear a little bit about the transition, because it sounds like when you started the Facebook group, you had no idea it would get this big. So at what point did you get more deliberate about doing this as your full-time business?
Yeah, I had no idea that it would turn into something like this. I think it was something that I created out of a need for myself, because unlike you said, it's very difficult. Even for an extrovert, it was like, people are already, the people that have lived here, they're already rooted, they have their people. And you're right. It kind of takes a long time, but I didn't want it to take so long for people. And I didn't want it to be so stressful for the extroverted people, because I used to be a very, very much an introvert. No one would believe that now, but I was. And my husband's very much like an introverted extrovert. And so I get it. And so I started hosting events, and I started wanting to bring people together and just meeting up very casually, very informal, no Eventbrite tickets, nothing. But the more and more I saw people wanted to meet up or have experiences, I was like, well, let's make this a nice experience. Let's have a photographer. Let's give them gift bags. Let's have flowers on the table, have a photographable moment. Let's go to a cool place or this hotel and so the more and more I saw people wanted that community and wanted the experiences. First of all, I didn't used to charge for tickets. So I was like, let's just go. And then I realized this is a lot of work. and
Right.
and it was a lot of time. And I had a little bit of an event planning experience in the past, but then I really just became an event person. And so I would say about end of 2018, I realized I had this moment where I was like, oh my gosh, we have over, I don't even remember what it was at the time, 2,000 people in our community. And every Facebook groups give you statistics, and like we have a 95% engagement rate. So
Oh,
that
wow.
means
Insane.
the majority of, and it's still like that today, 4 years later, and we're at 27,000 people.
Yeah, I was going to say you have tens of thousands of members now.
Right.
It's still that active. And so I just saw there's something here. And the fact that it wasn't slowing down, that people were still asking questions, people were still finding value, finding friends, finding a place that they could get their hair cut, they could take their dog or whatever, and finding connections at the in-person opportunities. I realized the time and energy I was putting in, that it was what I wanted to do and what I was always leaning towards, like on my lunch breaks at work.
Right.
After school, it was 3:30 or 4, and I would go home to work number 2, grab my laptop, go sit at a coffee shop or sit on the couch and plan our next event or work on our social media calendar, because it was just me for the longest time. But once I realized that it was not slowing down, and that there was really something there, and then brands and local businesses started to notice us and say, wow, you kind of have something here. We'd love to get in front of your audience because we're trying to market to them. And so that's really where the branches of, if we're going to get, money, revenue, technical, that's
Right.
where the multiple streams of revenue started showing up. And I think that's when I was like, I don't think I'm going to teach forever,
So what was that transition like? Because I'm assuming, there's this idea that the way what your passion is or what you should be doing is the stuff that you do, whether you get paid for it or not, like the stuff that you actually do, right? Which is kind of where that was. So at some point you're doing both gigs. And then I'm assuming there's a point, it's like, whether your husband's like, hey, I'd like to see you again at some point, right? There's a mosquito that's like right near my face, sorry. That like, hey, I'd like to see you again, instead of like the top of your head on the keyboard all day long.
Yeah.
And it's like, where are you?
You
right?
got it.
And then,
Yeah.
then there's a certain point, I'm sure the next morning you're like, I gotta go teach all these kids about bongos again, and I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm ready.
It's the recorder that really
It's the
puts you
recorder,
off
right.
in elementary.
Oh,
Yeah, I was a drummer by background, so everything is a bongo, right?
love it.
But I'm assuming there's some point where you're like, you know what? I think I could make this leap.
It was, I think at the end of 2018 was when I started feeling that. But I was nowhere near, revenue and financially to just like jump out of my job. And so 2019 was this just explosion of growth, just in the business, in our numbers, and just the data in general. We hosted probably 40 in-person events just in 2019, which I highly don't recommend.
Would you attribute the growth that you experienced in 2019 to the live events and the actual community building? Or do you think that those events happened in that quantity because of the community? Is it the chicken or the egg?
I think it's kind of both. I think there was just so much buzz, and it was just this like word of mouth, exponential spread. And then we did get picked up by D Magazine during 2020. I'm sorry, 2019, which was awesome.
Yeah.
That was also our second year of our conference, which is an annual conference specifically for female entrepreneurs.
Right.
And we brought in Jacqueline Johnson, who's the CEO of Create and Cultivate, huge brand, huge name. And then we did a lot of PR around that. And so I think there were so many, like, it makes me think of Mario Kart when you zoom across a little thing and it makes you go faster. There was just so many of those like zooming moments of, this press thing or this brand wanted to talk to us, or, this like we've been connected with Dallas Lights 101 for a long, long time. I'm sure you guys have heard of them. And I think it was just like all very synergetic. But to your question of, what was
there's a leap moment where you got to go, all right, I'm doing this, right?
There's
what was that catalyst for you? Like, was there one particular moment where you thought, okay, it's time? It was gradual. See, I
was very gradual.
Interesting. And I want to hear about this because, you talk to people and they tell you that like one moment in time where their life changed. And I'm like, in my experience, it's never been like that. Right. It's been a series of very, very small decisions repeated one after the other. And then you look up and you realize there's been a big change, but it's not, I don't know. I've never had that one pivotal moment.
No, so in 2019, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm making more than I am teaching. And that was huge. Teachers make, in Texas, it's actually pretty decent. You make in the 50s if you're, a younger teacher, but I never thought that was going to be a thing. I never thought I would be the CEO of my own company. And then at that point I had a couple of interns, and then I hired my first contractor and things like that. And so I was like, well, this is a lot. So, and you're right. My husband and I had 2 come to Jesus moments because the first one didn't take. That's what I usually say.
They never do. There's usually more than one.
Yeah. And now in hindsight, not in hindsight, but now with having that experience in my coaching business and my clients, I try to help them prevent from getting there and having to have.
I want to hear that later on, but
yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay.
But so there were a couple of moments where, where he was like, "What, I miss you and we sleep in the same bed. Like, what's going on?" And the biggest reason was I had never communicated to him what I was trying to do. He was like, why are you always gone? Like, why are you going to these events? Like, didn't you go to one 2 days ago? Or didn't you go to one of them last week? I'm like, yeah, but that was different. These are different people. And so I would highly encourage, if anybody's listening, talk to your partner or whoever in your life needs to know. Like, I didn't tell him the vision of where I saw this going.
But you probably didn't know, is my guess either.
I didn't know either, but there was a point where I was like forming all these goals and plans because I realized this was something and it needed to go somewhere, and I didn't want to teach forever, but I didn't communicate that.
So we had a psychologist on our podcast. He's been on twice, Dr. Ryan Holloman. And, he talks about communicating with your spouse about shared vision and figuring out what part of the vision is non-negotiable. It has to be there, and what parts of the vision are negotiable. And it sounds like that's exactly the conversation that you and your husband were having, either deliberately or by accident, that idea of like, here's what I'm trying to do. And I find so many times when people are on this journey and they're trying to accomplish something, whether it's financial or in business, is there's like a gap. And one person thinks like, oh, I've communicated this, because we do see each other all the time, and you see what I'm doing and I know what it is in my head. And so I'm working in that direction. And then the partner is like, wait, what? Like they see all the activity, but they don't have the picture of where you're trying to go. And in my experience, when people actually have that conversation with one another, it's amazing what opens up, because it's easy, I think, in situations like that to be like, I'm pushing really hard. What are you doing over here? And now you're complaining and I'm doing this, right? And when you have the conversation and you realize, oh, wait, no, you are like, you're on for the journey. Let's do it. We're going to do this together because we're a team. But I think that without the conversation, sometimes people are like, wait,
Where did you go?
Yeah. Where did you go and what are you doing? Do I get to come? Like it creates interesting dynamics.
So, do I get to come?
Yeah.
Well, and especially for the introverts, like, I mean, I'm not borderline introvert. I'm kind of, the older I get, the more introverted I get. I'm like, I don't want to go on another event. I don't want to go to this other.
Yeah.
And especially if you're going, like, if you and I were married and you're going out, I'm like, well, I want to hang out with you, but you're over here, but I don't want to go where you're going.
Yeah. And it's like, even if I go with you, I'm not going to get to hang out with you. You're going to be talking to
people. You're working.
And doing other stuff.
Yeah.
You're working. Yeah, exactly. And I think once we just had that conversation the second time, I had to really like slow myself down. And there was a point where like I wasn't taking care of myself, like physically, mentally, and so, I'm really glad that happened, because otherwise I would have hit burnout, and then I don't think I would be where I am right now. And so, once we had that conversation, it was like, I now had the mindset every time something came up, like, is this really going to move the needle, or can I stay home? Can I just not work tonight? But the switch from teaching to quitting, like I said, I was already making more than I was teaching, but as being self-employed, you got to account for taxes and your own insurance, which is just outrageous, and I won't get into.
And there's no TRS anymore at that point. Like, there's no little pension waiting for you on the other end and everything else.
Well, so with TRS, so when I quit, I actually, like, they give you COBRA. So I have like TRS's COBRA insurance, and I still have my, retirement from when I was teaching. But if you pull it now, it's like, you're not going to get to keep it all. So I'm just like, leaving it alone and all those things. So, but, we waited longer than I wanted to, but I did it because of the financial goals that we had. We wanted to be like double, triple prepared.
Well, then you're not worried. You don't waste the emotional energy freaking out about things.
No.
Right.
So I didn't leave teaching until December 2020, because also at the same time, we were buying a house, and it was a new build, and the housing market, was crazy. And so it was this, I was so stressed. And also I was in a teaching in a district that was, and in a school that was emotionally and physically and mentally exhausting because of the types of kids and students that we had. And so not to, that plus COVID, plus a full-time business now. And then I added the coaching. Yeah. And I added the coaching side of my business end of 2019. And so many layers. And I don't know how people are like, how did you do it? I don't know. I look back at myself, and it's like, I was just like removed from myself, just like carrying myself through. And so, but that's how we made that switch. And we just made sure there was like tons of savings and projecting the revenue for the next year of the business and really the health of the business before I just pulled the trigger.
Yeah, but I think it's amazing in those moments you find out kind of how tough you are, I think, which is really kind of cool, right? I mean, I've been through those moments in the past where it's like, I don't remember why I did that or how I got through that and how I didn't just go careen off a hill. But you kind of figure it out, right? And then you look back and go, well, I probably could have done X, Y, or Z better. Take care of yourself, better sleep, right? Don't burn the candle at all.
But you make it through. I mean, I definitely agree that it's the times that are hardest that show us what we're made of. And if you don't have those times, you don't know what they are. And I'm kind of laughing a little bit at your story because like I've been an advisor for over 15 years at this point. And in the middle of COVID, I was like, hey, it's not chaotic enough. Let's start a new company. And that's when we launched Benchmark Income Group. And my husband was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I got this. And it's, to me, it's like, once there's a little bit of chaos, what's a little bit more? I mean, you might as well just rip the Band-Aid off and go for it, right? Like, why draw it out like any longer than you have to? Yeah, I think there's, every entrepreneur, I think, has a little bit of that in them. Like, let's just do it.
You gotta have a little crazy in you.
Well, it's a little sadistic too, I think. I mean, there's some sort of,
it's a little twisted, but I think we live for it. Like that. I mean, that's where the excitement comes from, it's like, no, I can figure this out.
I'll
Watch
do it.
me.
Yeah. Tell me I can't do it. Just go ahead. Tell me I can't.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that there's some parallels between what you're doing and what we're doing with our clients is that we're big believers that you only get one shot at this life. And so it's got to be what you want it to be. And I think there's so many people that live a life of default as opposed to a life of design. Like they aren't deliberate about scripting what they want from their life. And a lot of times when we ask people, how would your life be different if money was no object? They've never even thought about it. They don't know their purpose. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing. And the exercise of thinking through it, I think, is very intimidating sometimes, but also very empowering. So when you're in that coaching space, can you tell us a little bit about how you help people like hone in on their goals? Is there a series of questions that you take them through? Walk us through some of that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing when I bring on new coaching clients, and I was just talking to one of my clients this morning about this, she was like, can you help me plan out this? And like, I don't know if my vision is clear enough on this. And so, but I could tell already she had not even thought about what she wanted,
Right.
And I think they're, especially like in the online business space, which is just a whole other ball game. There's so many, especially like in the female dominated spaces, there's so many people that are like our examples that we think that's how you have to do it. Or that's how you're supposed to do it. And so then it just completely strips away our like freedom to like have that time of consideration to think about, what do I want to do? And so for the longest time I was like, oh my gosh, I got to sell courses and make digital products and blah, 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 blah. I don't like doing that. And it's like not fun to me. I will repackage things that are digital and maybe sell it behind the scenes, but that's not my thing. I don't want to be the course queen, but for the longest time I was like, well, that's like what you have to do if you want to make a lot of money.
That's the script. That's the playbook, right?
But that's the thing. There's no playbook. Like we get to your point, design what we want our business to look like. And we design our business based on what we want our life to look like. And so that's usually where I start with them is, what about your life feels good right now? And what feels stressful and bad? I was talking to a client this morning, like I said, and she was like, she's juggling a full-time and a business, and she's trying to decide if she wants to take a full-time, and she has a kid and, a family. And she was like, I usually work for my job. And then I do my business until basically I fall asleep. And I was like, no. Like I promise you. And so I told her, I said, we're going to work on that first, because you don't have to do that.
Right.
I think there's so much with people's time and productivity that just they're not taught. And for me as a teacher, that like really kicks in as a coach. And so, I developed a program that is like an 8-week accelerator program, very like structured curriculum, just went all out teacher on this one. And it's basically a program I wish I would have gone through when I was taking off or trying to take off and build up so I could make that switch to full time. So not only are we diving into like the logistics and the marketing tactics and revenue planning and things like that, but like we're looking at your life and your time and your energy and your self-care and your family and things like that, because that will suffer if this is not structured, and this will suffer if that is, you know what I mean? And so
I think one of the difficulties of being an entrepreneur is that like it only shuts off when you shut it off. Right. I mean, there is always more work that you can do. And I find that to be true in our business too, right? Like if I have free time, I can fill it with something that will help move the business forward or our clients' goals forward. And so at some point you have to be just as disciplined about your time off as you are about your time on, or you will find that you just work all the time and the life that you were working to build doesn't exist because you've become almost a slave to business, right? Like, I think so many people decide to start their own business because they want the freedom that allows, and they find they have even less freedom because they have so many more obligations when they're running the entire business, and they either don't know how to delegate or are unwilling to delegate certain tasks, and they just keep taking on, as opposed to being, staging it. We're going to do these things first, and then we're going to add these things. But I had a business coach very early in my career, probably, I don't know, 13 years ago, something like that. And he pointed out to me that if I don't take a week off every quarter, that I'm not as effective, right? Like my productivity goes down because I'm exhausted, right? And when I take that week off, even though it's hard to step away, it completely recharges me. It gives me time to think about the business without being reactive to whatever things are happening. But without that deliberate time, and I would imagine that's kind of like the retreat that you just did, where you have time to get away from it, but still think about it. How do you do that for someone who's just starting, though? Because I find it's easier for me to do now because we have a successful business.
Right, it's working.
Right. But when you're just starting and you're terrified because you don't know where the next paycheck is going to come from, how do you maintain that balance at that point?
Oh man, it really is about discipline. You're going to learn a lot about yourself if you start a business. And so I remember, those earlier days where I was juggling both, let's just go there. I would work 7 days a week, and I would work on Saturday. I would work on Sunday. And so finally I was like, I hit a wall at one point. It wasn't the first time, wouldn't have been the last. And my husband plays a huge role in all of this. So he was like, why don't you, he just would like take a laptop. He's like, why don't you take a nap? I was like, and then he was like, you can't do this forever, Right. And so it was just the one step of, wow, Amanda, you got to have some boundaries. And so it was, okay, I'm not going to work on Sundays. Like, I know I have a full-time job and I know I have a business and we got to keep things rolling, but I knew this is not good for anybody. I can't be as productive. Your brain, and I've done not a ton, but a lot of research and listening to experts about your brain and what it needs, and like just even a change of scenery, getting outside, changing like your environment, or how clean is your environment, how organized are you, things like that. And so didn't work on Sundays. That was a huge boundary that I set, and it was so helpful. And actually, for the most part of when I started my business, even when I was teaching, I've always been really firm on the boundary of sleep, because I knew physically if I was staying up until 10 or 11 or 12 o'clock, and then I had to go teach 100 kids, just, 7 hours the next day.
Yeah.
Right.
Can't do it. Cannot do it.
Well, and they don't take a break.
6th grade, there's no way. There's no way. They'll beat you to the ground. And so I was pretty militant about going to bed at least by 9 o'clock. And so I'm pretty proud that's.
Yeah, you don't do that. I do. I'm in bed by 9:30 every night. And if I'm in and I can say that in the summer, but during the school year, because I have kids and I have to get up early, if I'm going to keep doing my workouts, I'm in bed by 8:30, because otherwise I can't get up early enough to do the workout and then get the kids ready and then get myself ready and then work.
There's no way.
Yeah. I'm with you on sleep. Yeah. So I want to ask.
1:45 last night. So.
That's not good.
Oh, I would be dead right now. Like, I would have missed this call.
I'm gonna say with Eric, though, it's a little bit self-imposed, because one of Eric's biggest gifts is ideation. He's giving me this look like, where are you taking this right now? But one of his biggest gifts is ideation. And so when he's working on stuff, he has a tendency to be like, ooh, this is an interesting idea. And then he'll like build out the entire model for it. And then an hour later, he'll be like, oh my God, I need to finish this now. And if that happens a couple times throughout the day, but that's the thing, like that's such a good gift to our clients, is that ideation, because he comes up with new ideas and he does the research and he builds out different processes and that kind of stuff.
But then I have to do my day job, right?
But then there's other things too.
I know, then you're so behind.
Right.
Yeah. We're working on getting him to delegate as much of that as possible. But I think
delegate, yeah.
Well, and I was off last week, so it's like it's always sort of that catch up when you're coming back.
Yes, and then your brain's like, oh my gosh,
I gotta do everything. Yeah. Well, okay. So I want to ask this question real quick. So a lot of what we talk about is the creation of lifestyle income. And I say that differently than passive income because it's not always passive. Sometimes you have to actually actively manage it. But lifestyle income to me is the idea that you create income streams that will come in no matter how you are spending your time. Right. And if you are spending your time actively developing income streams, it should be because you love it, not because you have to. So when you think about some of the things that you've done over the past couple of years, I would love to hear specifically how your lifestyle has changed because of the income streams that you're creating.
I love that. Look, we're millennials in our late 20s and we just bought a house that with student debt. That feels pretty good. Like I didn't think we would be able to buy a brand new built house this early in our lives. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's a different world. So
it is different. I mean, I think about when I was in my 20s. So I bought my first house when I was 25. But it was $115,000 and it was like in the middle of Austin, right? And it was a 1,300 square foot tract home. So let's be honest about what kind of house it was. But I actually just looked up that house, $600,000 now. And I'm like, there's no way I could have afforded that when I was 25. I mean, it is a different world now than it was, even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think, so that, and then, like this trip we just took, I went up to New York for this retreat, but we were able to also tack on a couple of extra fun days, and that was, funded by the business. And so we were able to like go do some fun sightseeing and, spend money on a nice dinner and not be like, oh my gosh, this is really stressful. Like, how much have we spent? And it's so interesting too, because my husband and I come from two different money backgrounds, and you probably know exactly what I'm talking about.
Very common.
And so he, he's always going to be worried about it. Even if I'm making $5 million a year one day, he's going to be like, are we going to go bankrupt?
I'm just going to change your sentence to even when I am making.
Even when. Yeah. Okay. Even when. Let's claim it now. And so it's just always interesting. And at one point when we were getting ready for this trip, he was like, should I just stop asking questions about the money? And I said, you know what? Yeah. It's because I don't want you to be stressed out. And he's like, because he did say, do we have the money? Are we going to go bankrupt? And I just laughed. I was like, no, this is a 4 or 5 day trip.
You met me? I will figure this out.
And it's so, we've had so many conversations because he's like, I have no doubt that you will like rule the world one day. Like, it's funny. He's like, we've, agreed that if ever we have kids, Lord willing, he's like, I will be a stay-at-home dad because I'm like, I know you're always going to make more money than me. And if I don't have to work, like we're going to rock that, because he grew up with a stay-at-home dad. He knows what that looks like. And it's just all these interesting things. And so I said, you know what? Yeah. He goes, I'm just going to let you take care of it. And I said, awesome. Yeah.
I love that you guys get to be deliberate about that. And I love too that even in Texas, like you're having the conversations about the individuality of your relationship and how it works and where your strengths are and what the partnership is, as opposed to doing what you think other people think you should do, if that makes sense. Because
I don't care.
I find so frequently when talking to people about like money and what they're doing, they're measuring themselves by someone else's scorecard, and they're designing their life based on someone else's idea of what success looks like, as opposed to saying like, okay, my husband and I had this conversation and this is what success looks like to us. Right. I mean, and to me, that's such a big deal because like my husband and I had this conversation too. He has a great job. He's a great earner, but he is very much a work, like a work to live kind of person. Right. Where I am a live to work kind of person. I mean, like I wake up thinking about it. I go to sleep thinking about it. To me, there's something just incredibly satisfying about seeing what I'm capable of. Like, how much can I grow? How much can I do for other people? What kind of an impact can I make? But for Mike, he's very like content. It doesn't matter what we make. He's happy, right? Like he just wants to hang out with the family and make sure like we have good relationships together and that we take fun trips and do fun things. And it's so important, I think, to have that balance, whatever it looks like in your relationship, because without him, I would be like foot on the gas pedal all the time and I'd probably be dead by now. Whereas he's like, hey, why don't you
be a fun person?
Yeah. Why don't you come over here and we're going to laugh a little bit and, then you can go back to doing your thing, but you need a little time. So I get your partnership. It's so great.
We had this conversation recently and he thought it would really hurt my feelings and it didn't. And he goes, I love you and I love what you do in your business. And I am always going to be the most proud of you. Like, you always amaze me. You like literally can do anything. He goes, but your business doesn't do anything for me because it's not his passion.
Right.
Right. Well, and it's not the Dallas boy band, it's the Dallas girl gang, right? I mean, it's a totally different thing, right?
Although he always claims he's the token boy because he will go with me to stuff. But
that's Eric in our office right now.
Yeah. He was like really afraid to tell me that. And I was like, of course it doesn't. That's exactly what I said. I was like, yeah, like I know. And he's like, that it doesn't do anything for me because we were talking about, our family and what we want our life to look like, going on this trip and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I know, and it was just like being able to be honest about the most important thing in your relationship and your friends. That's your real world, and your business and your business friends and connections. It's not like it's not real, but it's just very different, it's always interesting, but I love the relationship.
Let me ask one more question, because I know we're kind of running up on time, but if our audience wants to find you because they have questions about your journey or they want to hire you as a coach, any of that kind of stuff, where do they find you?
Yeah. So for all things community, Dallas Girl Gang on Instagram, dallasgirlgang.com. The Girl Gang podcast is our podcast. Our conference is coming up again this year, October 23rd in Dallas. And I mean, come one, come all. You can travel. We have tons of people who travel to come. And then my personal brand, Amanda's in Dallas, is my Instagram. And then the 8-week program that I mentioned before is called Passion and Profit Accelerator. And it's the 8-week program. If you're really still trying to get your business off the ground and you're just unclear and not confident, that's why I designed it. And that's definitely for you. And then amandacsmith.co. It's a very complicated website because my name is very common. And come hang out on social media. How you're hearing me now is how I am on social media, and come laugh and hang out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending your morning with us.